Hello and welcome. Now we all have habits, the good, the bad and the damn right annoying. And it's no big secret that our environment has the single biggest influence and it's going to have the biggest impact on how we're going to behave. Now for the longest time I simply took my habits and my rituals for granted in terms of feeling, well, this is my temperament, or I wish I could be more organized, or I wish I could have more structure, but I had no clear roadmap on how I was going to go about achieving that. And then I came across James Clear's Atomic Habits, and it was when I first started reading the book did I finally come to ask a crucial question, and that is, how do I achieve a different outcome in the same environment? Well, to answer that question, we're going to touch upon some of the key elements that I'm going to highlight that I've taken away from the book, from the 4 laws of behavioral change. Now, law 1 states make things more obvious. Now, something that wasn't obvious to me, not initially until I started reading the book, and that is how much of a relationship and connection our behavior and our routines have developed to times and locations. What's fascinating to read is that our brains have evolved in such a way that we like to predict outcomes before they even happen. And therefore, routines of behavior are then formed based upon past experience. Now, dopamine is heavily influenced in this process because dopamine is the hormone that's responsible for giving you urge and motivation to perform any activity throughout your day.
Before we go any further, we need to understand how James clarifies what are habits and how are they formed, and he puts it down to a 4-stage process of a cue, a craving, a response and a reward. This process helps us solve puzzles and anticipates rewards. The dopamine spike is understood as before a habit is learned, dopamine is released when the reward is experienced for the first time. The next time around, dopamine is released before taking action, immediately after a cue is recognized. This spike leads to a feeling of desire and a craving to take action whenever a cue is spotted.
Now that's great. So we understand the science of behavior and how behavior forms in the first place and how patterns of behavior are motivated by dopamine, and we understand that process. So how do we then use that information to our advantage to create new habits and new rituals that are going to obviously have a positive impact on our day? And the first technique that James goes over in the book is known as habit stacking.
So let's take a closer look at habit stacking. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, which might normally be associated with going downstairs and making a cup of coffee. However, before you make that cup of coffee, or straight afterwards, you might decide to create a new habit by reviewing or updating your daily journal. If you haven't already begun one, this would be a great time to start one. In addition to updating your daily journal, or at least starting one, you might decide to do a morning stretch or read at least 2 pages from something that you wanted to learn or something that you simply find entertaining or inspirational. This process can be compounded to create new habits.
Now, the second law states make things more attractive, and the best way to make something more attractive is to use the technique known as temptation bundling. I had to say it really slow because if I say it fast it sounds ridiculous. Temptation bundling. No, I can't do it. But temptation bundling is whereby you're taking rituals that sound like your habit stacking, but it's different in the sense these are simply rituals that you get pleasure from doing. So watching Netflix or going on social media, or even sometimes procrastination. So anything that you're doing that sort of, you just simply get pleasure from doing, but you don't have to do it. And you're going to attach a new ritual, a new behavior to that. And therefore the pleasure you receive from the ritual that you simply like doing or you get some pleasure from is then associated with this new habit. And therefore you're going to form this new habit based upon that dopamine you received from the habit that you simply get pleasure from doing. Now, the third law states make things easy. Now, I think it's fair to say there's nothing easy about this whole process, so we're going to better describe it and rephrase it and saying we're going to make it easier. And that doesn't get any better here either, because the best way to achieve that James described is through repetition. That sounds frustrating, so bear with me, but by repeating something more times or a sufficient amount of times, our brain is then better and finds efficient ways at performing that task. And that does a few things. One, it removes a stress element from that task because we're becoming more efficient at doing, and stress is probably going to be the biggest negative impact and the biggest influence on preventing us from doing anything. If you decide, right, I want to start reading, and you find a quite chunky old book like this, that can be quite daunting and quite stressful, but by repeating something enough times, your brain simply becomes more efficient and it removes that stress element from that. And the second thing it does, it primes that habit or whatever is associated to that habit for future use. So let's say you want to become more proficient in the kitchen and you want to become a better cook. You're going to end up removing any friction or anything that's associated negatively to that environment, and then it's therefore primed for future use. Now, something that's going to hinder this process and our whole progress is going to be procrastination. It's something that we're all guilty of doing. I put my hand up to it. I do it all the time. but something that I'm working on and something that James does go over in his book. And the best way to beat procrastination is using the 2-minute rule. The 2-minute rule is whereby you're simply starting a process of behavior within a 2-minute window, and you're going to find that the motivation to actually perform the entire task comes after you initiate the process. So again, let's go back to reading as a simple example. If you decide I want to start reading and it's a daunting process, simply by saying I'm going to read a page, or I'm going to pick up the book, I'm going to get my bookmark ready, I'm going to get my notepad ready to make some notes. That process, that initial process of that 2 minutes is what you're going to find is then going to give you that motivation. And the word I'm looking for, momentum. Momentum is the word I was thinking of. Give you that momentum. For some reason it sounds funny when I say it. Momentum to carry out the rest of that task. Now, I found a side note, I don't know if I read it in the book, whether I've invented this or I've come across it somewhere elsewhere, but I found actually procrastination can be a positive in the sense that if you decide to use tasks or mundane rituals that you don't really have to do, but simply get you going and you're sort of using that as a distraction to perform the task that you want to do, you can use that to your advantage. If I found that you're not using anything that's too taxing, that's going to be too overwhelming, that's going to take too long. But let's say you have some work to do on, you've got a blog to write, you've got a video like me to shoot, whatever it is, whatever the case may be for you. If you say, right, I've got the dishes to do, I've got the carpet to clean, those simple tasks that will only take a few minutes, I find that is actually can be used to your advantage, because you're going to get that dopamine again, the satisfaction from completing that task. You're going to get a little bit of adrenaline pumping, and you're going to get your body moving in a way that's going to make you a bit more productive. You can use procrastination in these examples to your advantage. Browsing social media, doing anything that's going to make you a little bit more docile and a little bit more passive, that's obviously not going to work. But things that are more active and things that are going to give you a little bit more motivation, I feel that these are examples where I've used procrastination, to my advantage. Now, the fourth law states make things more satisfying, and the technique described in the book to achieve that is by using gratification to your advantage. By flooding these habits and getting the sense of euphoria with these new rituals with positive emotions, you're then going to associate, or your brain at least is going to associate something positive from that. If you're only thinking, oh my god, I can't do this, I won't do this, your brain is only going to associate negative emotions and behavior to those habits. By trying to find something positive that you enjoy in that process, and this is something where you're going to have to manipulate, in where you're going to have to find something damn right positive in that. So let's say becoming fitter or exercising is one of your goals. By simply getting pleasure from shopping online for some workout gear, new pair of trainers or walking shoes, whatever the case may be, some new workout tops, whatever they are. But if you try to find some pleasure in that activity to then flood the habit with positive emotion. Now, we can recruit 3 demographics or 3 population groups to assist us in this whole process. James goes over recruiting from the close, in terms of family and friends, the many, and then the powerful. I would say the close only really works if it's the people in your proximity, something where there's a team effort involved, then that's certainly going to help you. Otherwise, I kind of ignore the many in this example, because a lot of us are guilty of negative habits. So unless you surround yourself with people who are sort of working towards the same sort of goals and have the same outcome in mind, then that's not really going to work. However, the powerful is the ones where I draw a lot of inspiration from, in terms of looking at people like James, who's quite an amazing individual. The Elon Musks out there, the Bill Gates, whoever they are for you, those personalities where you're going to draw inspirational from. So taking from those 3 demographics is also another way of receiving some sort of satisfaction from your task. So the last thing I'm going to go over that James does speak about that I found quite useful is how making doing nothing can be useful. Now, that sounds counterintuitive. How that works is simply by, if you find yourself procrastinating or you find yourself struggling to perform a task, even if it's finding that motivation and you tried the 2-minute rule that didn't work, you've tried habits, that all of these other techniques you've attempted, it's not worked. I'm going to suggest try to make nothing become part of what you want to do. And that sounds odd, but by simply stopping for a moment, slowing down, maybe turning the lights down a little bit and doing some breathing exercises. But that meaning nothing means meaning nothing. It doesn't mean, watching something on Netflix or something else. You need to just stop. That helps to refocus the mind, and it helps you sort of clear out your mind from anything that's sort of diverting your attention, or anything that's sort of clogging up the mind. Like talking to you right now I'm all over the place. But if I was to slow down and slow my breathing down, I'm able to focus a lot more sharper. I'm then going to recenter my whole process of where I need to be and where I need to go with my thought pattern. So by doing nothing is actually a positive in the sense how James describes it. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was useful. Just some key elements. Obviously, it's quite a book. There's a lot more to go through that you could have done in this video. So I highly recommend the read this. This is a book that's going to be on my shelf for years to come. I've had it for a couple of years and I've read it a few times now. So I wanted to share some of the tips that I've got from the book to help me really process all of the information and help me put these things into practice for myself. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you did make it this far, please give a thumbs up and consider subscribing or leave some comments in the comment section for anything that you might have taken away from the book. Until next time, thank you.